Welcome to the Sisterhood of Sweat. Today's guest is Lindsay Mango. Lindsay Mango is a life and business coach passionate about helping women create the lives and businesses of their dreams. A former college athlete at the University of Louisville, Lindsay first became passionate about life coaching when she embarked on her own personal development journey. 5 years after graduating college, Lindsay found herself feeling stuck, facing a disappointing truth that she was settling for the life she was supposed to live instead of the life she was meant to live. After hiring her own coach to help her fulfill her potential, she knew coaching was what she was meant to do all along. Never running or owning her own business before, Lindsay became a self-made entrepreneur when she launched her coaching business while working full-time. Through building an impactful online brand and leaving an impression on all the women she worked with, her business exploded and she was able to retire from the corporate world 6 months later. She just started her third year in business and has been named as one of Southern Indiana's 30 under 30 entrepreneurs and business owners. She has a podcast with over 80K downloads in the first year, and it is scaling her virtual business to $1 million of impact and income. It is her life's mission to be an example of what's possible and break the mold on what any woman is capable of doing in life, business, and everything in between. In the near future, she plans to write her first book, speak on stage at large events, and continue to grow an impactful brand for women. On today's episode, we talked about mindset, going after the big dreams, and why it's so important what you're filling your mind with. We also talked about not being a victim to your circumstances by controlling the narrative, and she gives some practical tips on how to do that. And not repeating the same problems over and over and over in life by dealing with them in the first place, and so much more. This was such a great episode with Lindsay. She was so vibrant, vivacious, and she's just in the flow, guys. Let's tap into that flow today. Get your coffee or your green tea and tune in now. Welcome to the Sisterhood of Sweat. I am so excited to have Lindsay Mango on the podcast today. Welcome, Lindsay.
Hi. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you know what? I really, after listening to you on your podcast, which is transitioning right now, but right now, if you guys look her up, she's Soul CEO. I just love the vibrant energy that I felt flowing from you as you talked. You were in the flow. You were just vibrating these good vibes, and it draws people to you when you're energetic, don't you think?
Oh my gosh, totally. Well, thank you for that. I love to hear that it comes through. Like, sometimes it can be a challenge expressing yourself through like a microphone when actually I record my closet. So when I'm staring at the back of my closet. So thank you for that. And 100%, I think a lot of people don't realize that their vibe and their energy speaks 10 times louder than what they're saying and what they're doing. And that for me was actually something at the beginning of my entire journey, was something that I realized that I needed to master because of how important it was. And again, I think so often, a lot of times people think like fake it till you make it, or, try to do these things, just like try to take these actions to get whatever goal you're going after. When in reality, it's more about how you feel when you're doing it, and that being the thing that will help you attract and create what result you want.
That's what translates your energy. It completely, I think, when you're doing things that light you up inside, that's your wheelhouse right there. And you want to stick close to those things. Now, many times in life, we have people that are in our lives that maybe don't feel comfortable when we're glowing and in our wheelhouse, and we're around the things that light us up. And I was listening to your podcast with your husband. She just got married, you guys.
Yay, yes.
And I really have to say the least likely one was I thought the most fascinating was where they talked about drawing in your soulmate. Now, why should you only show up as you to attract the right person?
Because if you show up as anything else, I forget what book this is from, but they call it like representatives. A lot of us send out representatives, which are versions of us that aren't actually us, to go do things out in the world, whether it's attract our soulmate and go on dates, or whether it's to make friends or in business or anything like that. And the reality is if you send out a representative to attract your soulmate or attract your person, what you're doing is you're creating this gap between who you actually are and who you're like allowing them to fall in love with. And so if that's the case, you're either going to attract someone who actually isn't the right person for you, or you're going to attract somebody who actually would love you, but you're not even giving them the opportunity to actually love who you really are. And so what it does is it creates this space of within you, like, do they actually love me? Like, do they actually like me and love me for who I actually am? And you don't know that unless you're putting out the most authentic and real version of yourself.
Well, what advice would you give to a listener that wrote in that she feels that she has to hide pieces of herself from her fiancé?
Mm-hmm.
She feels like that when she is the real her, that he's uncomfortable with that. And she just keeps feeling like she has to hide this. Is kind of what I grasped from her letter.
Yeah. So I think the first thing is, celebrating the awareness of this discomfort, right? The first step to any change and any shift you're going to make is being aware of what's happening between your two ears and what's happening with how you feel. So I think the first thing is like being like, okay, I realize I can celebrate the fact that I recognize there's this gap in, how I'm showing up and what I actually feel. And then the next thing I would ask or have them ask themselves is why, right? Like, what's showing up? And you basically said that this woman thinks that she can't really show who she is to her fiance. Otherwise, like, he feels weirded out, or if he feels like a certain way. And so I think usually our significant others mirror back to us our own belief system. So I think the second thing I would ask after why is, what part of you feels uncomfortable with being who you really are? Like, what part of you doesn't accept these parts of yourselves, and why? And really digging into the core of that, because you either attracted this guy or this person because because of this, right? Like, based on these shadows or based on these things that you are afraid to show, and they're just mirroring it back to you. I know that's really challenging to hear, but maybe this isn't the right guy. If you truly were to own who you really are, like, would this person be your person? And so I think it's just a matter of recognizing, would I rather spend my life pretending to be something that I'm not? And like feeling like I am constantly sending out a representative and kind of in my own little imprisonment? Or would I rather be who I really am and get to experience life's fullness and real love because I'm being who I actually want to be? So I think it's about identifying why that's happening and what you would have to believe to shift that, right? And seeing that it's important to you. Like, why is it important to you to actually be yourself and be in love with yourself and be in love with somebody who loves the actual you?
And don't you think that when we are fully ourselves, we're going to attract in more like us? Just more on our wavelength, and repel people that aren't necessarily liking of who we are?
100%. I mean, it's like scientifically, every single thing vibrates at a certain frequency. And so whatever vibration you're on, you attract like vibration. So it's like when I think about guys I used to date years ago, it's like they're great people. Like there's nothing wrong with them, but I kind of laughed to myself because I like wouldn't put up with any of the stuff that I used to allow, 3 years ago, 5 years ago. And so, when you start to vibrate at a different level and step into a different version of you, you literally elevate the vibration that you are attracting out in the world. Now, does that mean you don't attract things that aren't the right fit? Not necessarily, but who you are at that point means saying no to what's not the right fit and yes to what is.
So let's say we have somebody that's vibrating. They start finding their power. They weren't really fully living in it before. They start finding like their power within. They start stepping into that and vibrating. Now, does this make people around them uncomfortable because they're not used to this vibration? And what would your suggestion be around that?
100%. Like I actually wrote a blog a really long time ago and I called it the cost of growth. And it's something that not a lot of us talk about, but there is a cost, which often is losing people that your old vibration attracted into your life. So if you think about it, everybody's like reality is based off of their mindset and what they believe about the world. And so we tend to attract people that line up with that. So of course, if you're going to change the rules about how you show up and what you do and who you are, naturally people who have these expectations of you to show up a certain way that fits into their little box is going to make them uncomfortable and is going to make them very resistant. Like for me, when I first started this journey, a lot of the people that I loved, that I spent time around, kept telling me I changed and that I didn't care about the same things and really would say like negative stuff about it. And it was hard. Like, I think, it's a tough conversation when people that you love and care about have an opinion about who you're becoming and what you're growing into. But I think the biggest piece of advice I would give people who are experiencing that is recognizing, one, that they are changing. Like for a long time, I was like, I'm not changing. I'm not a different person, blah, 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 because I was so afraid of what that meant if I was changing. But when I really fully accepted that, right, and that I was changing, that was the whole point of this and why I was growing, then I started to create an energy that basically was like, hey, like I'm accepting that I am changing and you get to love me or leave me. And so then I think the other piece is recognizing that while it can be very painful, on the other side of like releasing the expectation that they stay in your world or that they like who you've become, what you're doing is you're giving yourself the opportunity to shed what is no longer in alignment and step into a new place where you can attract all of the right people, all of the people that lift you up, all of the people that believe in what you're doing and that love you for who you are. And that is such a magical place to be in.
I love that. I mean, it's a new year, and my last podcast was New Year, New You. Basically, you're transitioning this year because you're going to open up new horizons. Lindsay's going to help us today with that. People are setting goals, Lindsay, and I just said, let's have big dreams and let's break them down into goals, not necessarily resolutions, because people don't really stick with those. Only 8% of the population.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
That's really a small percentage. So I think you got to get to your core, the heart, the core value of who you are and what it is you really want in life. Now, this is going to shake some things up for people. How can they begin to go after the life of their dreams and not be shy about it?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing is realizing like why it's important to you, right? So when I first started this whole journey, or when I set really big, crazy goals, that everybody around me was like, what the heck are you, like, I don't even know what you do. I don't know what's happening. Like they all had judgments. They all had thoughts about it. I had to go back to why it was important to me and my mission in this world, which was that, one, I would rather die trying to live like an epic life and get everything that I want than just settle for something less. And two, that I knew that people in the world needed like what I was offering. Now, this is specific for business, but it could be true for whatever goal you're going after. Like really figuring out, why is this important to you? What is the thing that like almost brings you to tears that makes this important? Because when you go back to that, then all the naysayers and all the people that are surrounding you that don't support it are like, they don't have as much weight anymore. So I think that's the first piece of it. And then I think the other thing is starting to be powerful about setting boundaries from a compassionate place with these people and, you know, how they feel about your new habit. So I remember for me, this is an example, like I used to eat, when I worked a job, I used to eat out of Tupperwares, right? And a lot of people that I've even coached in the past have like drama about people, you know, saying they're all going to pizza and they're eating out of a Tupperware, and people would, you know, make comments about it. Like, why are you eating out of a Tupperware? Why don't you just eat pizza with us? Blah, 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 blah. But I think the biggest thing is realizing from a loving place that of course they have that perspective, because their mindset about whatever they're doing is creating their current result. And so, of course, they have a different opinion because they don't necessarily have the result that you want, and having like, okay, I understand that. That's coming from their own belief system. But then also setting boundaries from this place of like, hey, I can have compassion for where you're coming from, but like, I would appreciate it if you didn't mention, you know, anything about the Tupperware. Or when I say I don't want to go to lunch go to pizza for lunch or whatever, have pizza for lunch. Whoa. I don't know why that was a tongue twister, but that you just say like, if I say no, I'm doing it because I'm trying to move my goals forward. And I know you might not understand that, and that's totally okay. But like, I'm working towards being the best version of myself, or I'm working towards hitting that goal. And I think oftentimes people don't set those boundaries, and they just let people kind of stomp all over their goals, when those boundaries can be really important to protecting yourself as you grow and become the person who can confidently take the actions you need towards your goal.
Absolutely. And I really think a big step, because I think back to this story of when I used to compete in Miss Fitness, and then I changed organizations and went to Fitness America. And I remember one of the girls that I knew from Miss Fitness said to me, something's different about you. What's changed about you? Because I all of a sudden went from the back of the room to the front of the room, and I started winning awards and being in the top 5 and having photo shoots and all of the things. And I will tell you, the biggest difference was I gave myself permission. I wasn't giving myself permission before to do and have those things. I had a story in my mind about, you know, who it was going to affect and why I couldn't go after the things. And when my dad passed away, I realized life is halfway over, you know, because I'm 57, I was 50 at the time. And I realized, you know, if I'm going to do something, I need to do it. And you know what? Not make excuses and not let anybody really stand in the way of what I envision for my life.
Oh my gosh, I love that. It's such a powerful story. And I think everybody like has kind of a turning moment. You know, for me, my grandma passed away, and it was a moment that really impacted. She was like the grandma I was most like close to. And it really gave me that perspective that life is really short, and that what was important about it. And so I love that you really used probably what was a challenging moment in your life for good, to serve you, to help you, you know, fuel yourself forward to get what you really wanted and give you that permission.
Yeah. And I think I just recognized that nobody's going to be, when you go 6 feet under, you're going by yourself. Okay. And all these people that you were supposedly pleasing, they may not even be at your funeral. I mean, I'm just saying, like, in reality, why are we pretending so much and people pleasing so much that we're losing sight of who we are?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, totally. I love that.
Yeah. And I think, you know, when you've been a people pleaser, or, you know, like, along those lines of I'm in the Midwest, not giving yourself permission, you have to fight. It isn't just something that comes easy. Like, I did it. It was exciting, but I have to still kind of fight that fight to remind myself that I'm worthy of the things that I want. And give myself that permission.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a constant journey. I think, I just recorded another podcast with somebody else right before you. And we were talking about the idea that like, no matter how much you grow, we are all humans with a human mind. And the human mind will always try to do what is most efficient and what's going to keep us safest, which means that no matter like how many times, over time you'll evolve and you'll get used to doing some of the scary things, but there will always be more scary things and more uncomfortable things to help you reach new heights. And it's a really important part of your journey. And it's not allowing it to dictate how you show up and what you do is one of the most important parts, because I always joke, like our brain would love to just sit on the couch and watch Netflix all day. Like it would love that. Like it's efficient. It doesn't have to think. It's safe. Like it would be really comfy doing that. But that's not where the magic is happening. And so I love how you said that, like, it's still uncomfortable. I still have to tackle those things sometimes. And to me, that's where the juice of life really is, like I don't feel good if I'm like sick and I'm on the couch for like a week, watching Netflix. Like I don't feel like I've done anything. It's like the juice and the zest of life is in the overcoming the uncomfortable things and failing and trying something new and trying something different.
Oh, for sure. I remember the first time when I went surfing, there is a little fear, like, oh my gosh, am I going to get knocked out by my board? Are there going to be sharks? Whatever you might think about. But mostly all I could think about really was the exhilaration of it and how fun it was trying over and over and getting up on the board. And it was probably one of the funnest experiences I've had other than swimming with the dolphins. That was pretty cool.
So I love that you said that, because I actually have heard that scientifically that like excitement and fear actually has the same effect in our body, like the same exact like chemical reaction or whatever you want to call it. The only difference is our mindset about it and how we are experiencing it, right? So like you could have focused on the fear or the like discomfort of that, but instead you chose to see excitement.
Right. And I liked what your husband, Chris, said. Is that correct?
Yep.
On the podcast, he talked about fear being temporary. And so when you realize that a struggle or a situation really is temporary, mm-hmm. It's not always going to be that way. It helps you to get through it. Like if you have loss or as in his case, his spouse, not you, was cheating on him. That's a horrible situation. I think it helps when you're in the middle of it to realize there is going to be another side. And now look at him. He's married to you.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to think that was a big achievement. No, he's very good at that, in that idea of everything's temporary. And I think, it really does serve you, because I think when you're in it, when you're in the pain, when you're in the suffering, when you're in the doubt, it like feels like it's going to be forever sometimes. And it feels like you don't know where the like light at the end of the tunnel is, but like there always is a light at the end of the tunnel. And I think also if you can have the perspective of everything is happening for you, right? Like I'm sure Chris probably would have slapped somebody in the moment if they tried to tell him that when he was really in his emotion. But today he looks back and he's like, I'm so grateful that happened. Like I wouldn't have the life I have today. I wouldn't have you. And that's more than I ever like thought was possible. And so I think it's also powerful to see that like everything is guiding us somewhere. And sometimes it can be really like crappy and suck, but it like there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and something is going to come from it if you choose to see it from that.
And I think it is hard when you're going through, like when I tore my hamstring completely from the pelvis, and I was ready to compete. I was flying out to compete the very next day. I tried to, when I found out that I had to have surgery, see why this happened for me. And it's hard in the moment when that was like my life, competing and fitness. And But now hindsight, I mean, I expanded and rebranded my entire business, my gym, and living into my dream vision of the Sisterhood of Sweat, my dream gym. I see that I was being redirected in a new direction. Mm-hmm. And it was a redirect. And somebody upstairs really wanted to get my attention because I didn't just injure myself once. I injured myself trying to get back up and get at it again 3 times.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
I finally said, I surrender. I surrender.
I'm listening. Yeah.
I'm listening. And now I'm feeling really strong, but I'm like, okay, I know I'm going a new direction. I'm listening.
Totally. Oh my gosh.
So I love how you coach people into making major transitions in their life. Mm-hmm. Why is making a transition have nothing to do with our circumstances?
Well, because I'm sure we have all experienced this where we said, once I have more time, or once this situation is different, then I'll start doing something different. Then I'll try to create a different result, or then I'll work out, or then I'll do whatever. And I'm sure, maybe even if you did it temporarily, I'm sure we all have seen that play out, that never actually creates the results that we want to create. Because the reality is that everyone in the world has had different circumstances, and some have had really terrible circumstances. Some have had really great circumstances, and they all have made different choices because they have different perspectives and different mindsets that have created different results in their lives, in their careers, in anything. And so I think the reality is that whenever you're making a transition, whenever you're shifting, I tend to think of it as like, not the universe, God, or whatever you believe is saying, like, prove it. How bad do you want it? But really giving you an opportunity to become the person you need to become to create the result, which means that person decides no matter what, they're committed and they're going to show up no matter the circumstance to create this result. So it's like you're literally being given the lesson you need, the thing you need to work through to strengthen that muscle in times of transition to become that version. Like, I mean, let's use fitness for an example. If you went to the gym and you did a new workout and your muscles weren't sore after, you'd probably be like, okay, I got to push it a little bit harder. I got to do this differently. You literally have to tear the muscle down, and it hurts when you work out to make it stronger. And that's exactly what's happening when you're making transitions in your life, or when you're going after what you really want. It's like there's always going to be things that want to get in the way of you creating the result that you want. There's always going to be like situations and things that don't make sense. But when you become the person that doesn't allow that to get in the way, you now become the person who gets the result.
You first have to believe that you deserve it, that you can achieve it. You have to believe. I think faith is number one. You have to give yourself permission, number two, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe for me, like that is one of the biggest foundational things I teach people, because again, we all like to get caught up in the external things, like I must not be doing this thing right or whatever. And you can always narrow it down to this one question of, if you believed wholeheartedly that this thing that you wanted was happening, would you be doing something different than what you're doing now? Or how would you be handling this failure differently than what you're doing now? And if your answer is different, like if what you're doing is different than your answer to that question, you have to go there first, because otherwise you're just putting Band-Aids over things that aren't actually at the core and heart of what is driving this bus forward.
Right. And I really think for these big dreams, you have to take a leap because you're stretching. And big dreams are what really fire you up. The small dreams that are easily achievable do not have you working at full capacity.
100%. Yeah.
So when people come to you and you're coaching them, and you're coaching them to live the life of their dreams, what are some of the things and habits they have to shed?
Oh man, they have to shed. I thought you were going to say that they have to implement. So shed, I would say, using their old thought process to make current decisions. Like if you have this thought of like, well, I've never done it that way, or I'm not the type of person to do this, like that is what has created your past results. So you have to shed like these belief systems about you and about life and about like your ability in order to start creating different results. I think they have to start, like I said this earlier, they have to have a high level of awareness. Because again, I forget the statistic exactly, but I think it's like by the time you're 30, if you don't have awareness, you're basically operating on 80% of like your subconscious mind. And your subconscious mind is like a computer saying, how do I keep you alive and how do I keep you safe? So, all the big stuff doesn't happen inside of that space. So, really starting to bring awareness to how you're feeling and what you're thinking. So I guess the flip side of that is like totally being numb. They have to let go of being numb and unaware of what's happening in their mind and what's happening in the way that they're feeling. I think the other thing is, they have to shed this belief that failure or doing it wrong or messing up is the end of like the journey for them. Like to me, it's like, that's just the beginning. Like this is your opportunity now to handle this differently or look at this differently than you ever have before and see that this is redirecting you or guiding you to exactly where you want to go. So I think that's a big part of it. And then I think also, some of your old habits have to change, right? Like the way you're doing, like the habits you have, again, are creating your current results. So, if you're partying until midnight every night, like that's probably not going to serve you in creating the result that you want. Or if you're hanging out with people who don't really care about the like same things that you do, then they're probably going to influence you in some way. And so really starting to change your environment and the habits.
Oh, 100%. Changing the environment to support what you want.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Because again, it's like, if I'm working on my confidence and I'm surrounded by 30 people a day who tell me that, I'm bad or like, I don't know what I'm doing or I'm silly, like that is going to feed in and fuel the story that I already have, which isn't going to serve me to create the results that I want.
I love that. I love that. And I found it sort of interesting. We're talking about the 80% conscious mind a second ago. Mm-hmm. I was listening to Dr. Phil on his New Year's podcast, and he was talking about how when people go to do public speaking, if they're focused on fear and delivering a speech, it's in half because 50% of you is focused on being afraid and fear and people not liking you and you crashing and burning, and the other 50% is trying to give a speech. So you're not 100% there. And so I was just thinking, like, if we would all go in this year on everything we want to do and deal with the fear later, just go 100% towards what you're trying to focus on and just see what happens. Mm-hmm. It's going to be magic, I think.
Oh my gosh. I love that. And I always tell people, like, I think this is from the book called Big Magic, but if you're going to go do big things in life, like fear is going to be there. Like it's going to be in the car with you all the time because you're crashing through your limitations. But if you let it drive the car, right, and take over that 50% and pull you out of what you're really trying to do, then you're letting it run your life, and that's not going to help you create different results. So I always like think about this vision of literally putting fear in like the back seat, like being like, hey, you're here because I'm doing something amazing, I'm doing something big, I'm growing, but you're not the one driving the car. I'm the one driving the car. And I love that because, I coach so many business owners and so often their work comes from this place of service for other people. But then when they're in it, they're so in their own head that they can't serve the other person. So I think if you also flip your focus, which is pretty much what he's saying, from what you're afraid of to how you're going to help even one person in the audience or what you want to help them with, it will totally redirect your energy and help you, push past the fear, like put it in the back seat.
And I just think reframing it was really like a reframe for me today to think about the fact that I was dividing my energy. So if I was half focused on fear and half focused on the thing, I wasn't putting 100% towards the goal. Mm-hmm. And how could you succeed? So you'd half succeed, you'd half-ass it. So like, why not use your whole ass and go 100% for it, you know?
I love that. So good.
So, I mean, I love talking about this kind of thing because I think it really moves the needle for people. It's all the mindset training behind what you do. How did you ever get into this space? I mean, was it any kind of, did you have a backstory to get
here? So I have an accounting degree that I got from college that I don't use, that I like, literally my husband's like, you have an accounting degree? Like when I'm like asking questions or talking to our accountant and I'm like, I'm confused. So I have an accounting degree. I did like 5 different jobs when I graduated college. I mean, I bounced all over the place, really like ultimately trying to find what I was passionate about. And, you know, I was an athlete, so I played volleyball my whole life. And so, you know, I already had a really good foundation of my mindset and like having discipline and the ability to fail and create good habits, but I wasn't really aware of like how to use it. It was just kind of like there already. So over time, as I started to find that like the corporate world wasn't my jam and wasn't what I loved, I actually got hooked into a network marketing company, which, if you know, a lot of times they are big on personal development. So I started picking up some books. And, you know, You Are a Badass was one of the first books I read, and it like blew my mind.
I love that book.
I am a badass. And so it really started to help me see how my perspective and how I was doing things was keeping me from my goal, and that, you know, I really could do whatever I wanted to do. So that kind of evolved. And then I actually went to a networking event for my job. I was in a recruiting job, and I met this girl who said she was a coach. And I was just like, for my recruiting job, I had to meet with people every week. So I was like, I'm going to call everybody that I talk to tonight. So I meet with her with no intention, thinking, what does this chick do? Like, I don't even know what's going on. And then I sit down at coffee, and in my own personal life, even though I had started growing a business, I started to feel more stuck. I started to recognize like I'm the problem. Like I keep recreating the same issues. So we're sitting there and she tells me what she does. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, what? So then I like literally just like word vomit and tell her everything. And I'm like, can you help me? Like, I feel so stuck. I feel like I have so much potential. So I hired her that day. It was a really uncomfortable decision, but that really is what changed the course of everything, because what I learned from that experience was how to actually like manage my mindset and like my perspective and use it as an asset to help me create different results in my life. And that's kind of what ignited the fire. I stopped the network marketing company. I realized this was what I was ultimately meant to do. And then I am just always being a student of my own mind. Like I always realize that I'm a human being, and to show up and coach other people powerfully and understand real fear, not just in a book, like real fear and how it feels, or real like blocks or real things that are keeping me from doing what I want to do. I have to experience it and go deep into it myself. So understanding that also has really helped me cultivate such a awareness and such a great perspective on this to help serve other people. So it's like my husband and I joke that I've been training for this my whole life, and I just didn't realize it just with all of my sports experience. And yeah, once I figured out kind of what the magic sauce was, and it just was like I was obsessed with learning and understanding more about it.
I think I've kind of been, I mean, I've always known since I was probably a teen, like, you know, 12, 13 years old, that motivation was for me, and it was what I was about. And I like to be everybody's cheerleader and just get people inspired to achieve greatness. And I could tell that you want the same things. And I really enjoyed where you were talking about you have to solve the problem where you are right now, instead of just running from it and jumping out into like another relationship, because that will follow you if you don't change what's attracting it in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And I love, love, love that because it is just so daggone true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So true.
I love that could, I mean, it's such an important part. And it took me a while to realize, really learn that, right? Because our ego wants to protect us and it doesn't want us to think that we're part of the problem or whatever problem we have in our life. But what I started to realize was like, even though I dated different guys or had different jobs or did different, like I still felt the same way. And that's when I really started to like take ownership of like, this is me. And I love this quote of, if you take the same brain and you put it in new situations, it's going to recreate the same problems. And I will tell you, like, I still experience this. Like I have everything I ever dreamed of in my life, like right now today. And there are still things that I took with me that like, I'm always showing up for the lesson, but there's still things that I do even now that I did 10 years ago because I haven't completely healed them yet. And they create cycles and they hold us back. And so I feel like if you can really reflect on that and recognize like, whatever result you're creating, yes, there are circumstances that we can't control in life, 100%. But what we can 100%. Always control is our perspective and how we're handling it and how we're contributing to it. And when you can take ownership of that and start to like show up for those lessons, that's how you really like make change. Not just create different results, but create different results within you and externally.
Yeah, I really think, I had a coach that would always ask me, where have you heard that story before? Whatever story you're telling yourself. A lot of the times it would be, I felt like my partner was holding me back, or I think I thought I wouldn't be believed. There were these stories that would repeat. And I could look back when she said that and really recognize where the story started from. And that right there is a game changer when you can just reflect on some things that keep appearing in your life and just kind of examine it and say, what am I allowing? First of all, what am I allowing in my life? Am I setting proper boundaries? And where have I heard this story before?
Those
that. 3 things are game changers, and it can change your entire life. And one more thing, because we're kind of getting close to the end, but I was just thinking of this story, Eric Thomas, the top motivational speaker.
Uh-huh.
I was at the Summit of Greatness and I was in the audience and I wanted to ask, we were thinking of questions. I was on crutches. That's when I had my surgery. So I was not moving around too well. And I was just I hadn't really thought of questions for people, but I thought, well, if I was to ask them a question, I think I'd ask him, what do you do when people hold you back in your life? And I was standing there a while, and then my own answer came, nobody holds you back but you.
Oh my gosh.
You're the one that has to give yourself permission, because really when you're having to get permission from somebody else, you gave them that power. So take your power back.
Yes. Heck yes. Oh my gosh. So good. I love that so much.
I have so loved talking to you today, and I love all your insight and your fresh perspective for everyone out there to have an amazing year. And I just wanted, can you leave the audience with 3 mindset tips?
Yes. Okay. Number 1, ask yourself, how could I see this differently? Like any situation, anything that's happening, like what different perspective could I have with this? Number 2, they kind of go hand in hand, is you could actually flip-flop them, but does this serve me to believe this? So a lot of times we're very committed to our stories and what we believe, and we're like, look, I have all this evidence that, like I'm not smart, or that I am a failure, or whatever, right? And so over time, we really see whatever we believe about our lives. Like we have total evidence of it, and it feels very true. But the question that I ask myself and my clients when they're very committed to a story is, does it serve you to believe this? And if the answer is no, that's the first opportunity to say, okay, like I need to change this then. Even if this feels true to me, there's like another way to see this and another perspective. And I think the third thing is asking yourself, who do I need to become in order for me to have this result that I want, or in order for this thing to not be in my way? A lot of times, I think we talked about this a little bit earlier, but a lot of times we like to think about like, what do I have to do? And what do I have to, like, putting Band-Aids on these things. And yes, you have to take massive action. Like, mindset is not like effective without taking action, but action will easily come when you shift your mindset. So when you ask yourself the question of who do I have to be, a clear path is going to be created for you. And it will help you look at like, who do I have to be to not let my significant other hold me back? Well, a woman who really believes in her work, and a woman, and that will give you the guide of where
Ooh, that's powerful. Yeah, I like it.
And start to bridge your way there, right? So like, okay, I don't believe that yet, but I could believe that I'm becoming more powerful, and starting to bridge the gap to become that woman, and ask yourself, what action would I take if I believed that? And like, so, I mean, so much I could go into, but I was
yeah, let's get into the juice of it now.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I loved your tips. They're so great. And I just loved, again, your fresh perspective. And I can tell you're plugged into the right juice because you're glowing. And, just congratulations on your newlywed now. And
thanks.
all glowy.
I'm so grateful. Thanks.
And I just want, do you have anything, any offering for people? Okay.
So, well, first, everyone can follow me on Instagram at Lindsay Mango _. That's one of my favorite places to spend time and add value. And then I have a mastermind open right now. I think when this podcast goes live, it's like the day it closes. But for the right person, I would be open to having a conversation about it. But I have a mastermind that I've built for the businesswoman who has already crossed the 6-figure mark, but finds herself recreating the same kind of struggle and like grind and feeling burnt out, who like recognizes that it's not her success that's going to dictate whether she feels the way that she wants in her life, that it's her, and she's really ready to make that change. So this mastermind is about creating new levels of growth in your business, but while you're like living your life, loving your life, not trying to prove your enoughness through your achievement. There's 2 retreats. It's 8 months of coaching with me and this amazing group of women. So I'm taking applications for it and really committed to like just getting the word out to find the right women, because they tend to be busy, right? Like they tend to be on the go. So if you also think of somebody, like send them to my Instagram, send them to connect with me. You can find the application at lindsaymangocoaching.com /next-level-life.
And where can they find your podcast? Because it's changing, right?
Yeah. So they can still look up Soul CEO.
Okay, cool.
We actually just know it's going to change, but it hasn't yet. So look me up there. And then again, you can always type in Lindsay Mango into the podcast app.
Awesome. Make sure you guys give Lindsay a shout out. Check out all her programs. They are amazing. And I really feel anybody that would sign up would have significant changes in their life.
Aw, thank you, Linda. I'm so grateful. And thank you, everybody. I'm truly honored to be here.
Thanks, everybody. And catch us next time on the Sisterhood of Sweat.